So today we're going to look at the politics of how the Integrated Photonics Institute came to Rochester. And two people who have been following this story very closely with the Democrat Chronicle are here today, Khristopher Brooks and David Riley. Khristopher Brooks is the Innovation Entrepreneurship Staff Reporter for the Democrat Chronicle. He writes about the newest or smartest products, processes, or people who lead to job growth in the Finger Lakes region. After spending 8 years covering education across the country, he comes to upstate New York with a nerdy passion for comics, basketball, and herb gardening. He holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from Central Michigan and a master's degree in narrative journalism from NYU. David Riley is the civic engagement staff reporter for the DNC, covering government and politics from City Hall to the county office building. He focuses on how citizens and voters shape public affairs, as well as the obstacles that sometimes prevent their voices from being heard. David grew up in rural Ulster County. Before joining the DNC in 2013, he spent much of his career outside Boston, where he was an award-winning reporter and editor for a chain of suburban newspapers. A husband and Rochester homeowner, he likes cities, bikes, hikes, and music. Please join me in welcoming Khristopher and David to the podium today.
Good. Okay. Thanks. So before I talk about where we stand with the two competing governing boards for AIM Photonics, I felt like if I gave you guys sort of an overview basics of how the operation is supposed to be structured and how it's supposed to work going forward, my next presentation will be a little bit more fruitful, okay? So this is just my little presentation on AIM Photonics, the basics, okay? So just bear with me here. Now, you hear about all these people doing research on photonics, and one of the common questions people might ask is, so what exactly they're supposed to be researching, or at least what area? So at AIM Photonics, most of the research is going to be centered on defense, right, from the DoD, and also in energy companies, and healthcare companies, and communications. Anybody who was here last week, we heard Paul talk about the optical fiber cables, right? That's making our internet go faster. We can finally come up with ways to make the light act quicker and more intelligently, so all of our connected computers can do even more important things. So all of those areas are going to be the primary focus, right? And you're going to have individual groups of scientists and researchers pitching different research topics. Now, these groups of scientists under the AIM sort of umbrella thing, they're going to be called technical working groups. If you ever look at any of the literature for the AIM Photonics groups, you'll see TWG. They like to do acronyms a lot there. I don't know why, but that's what that means. So the question then becomes, if everybody's proposing these ideas to do photonics research on, whose idea gets approved to go forward and whose doesn't? Well, the short answer is they have a technical review board that decides that under AIM Photonics. Now, these four right here are drawn directly from the AIM Photonics paperwork, and it's kind of clunky, so I'm going to do a little bit of translation for you. Cooperatively identify highest impact baseline and advanced capability projects. Pick which ones they're going to do. Comprised of industry, government, and academia together with AIM Photonics management. Everybody's supposed to have a say in which one we're going to do. Provide prioritized recommendation of project portfolio, new projects, project sunsets to AIM Photonics leadership and executive team. Tell the leadership board which ones we're going to do. Provide visibility for leadership council and executive team for project status, linkages, and project management issues on a biannual basis. Tell them twice a year how we're doing. Listen, bless their heart, most of these people are engineers. They didn't go to school for it. That's what I'm here for, okay? Don't worry about it. So, naturally, the next question is, so who's funding this now? And Mr. Riley touched on that a little bit. The $600 million comes from a combination of $110 million from the federal government, $250 million from Cuomo in the state of New York. That's basically your tax dollars, right? And another $250 million comes from optics and photonics companies, most of them based here in Rochester. Now, if anybody's taking notes on this or writing down, put a star right back on this one, because this is important. We're going to come back to that, okay? So that $600 million funds the Institute for the next 5 years. What's the natural next question? What happens after that 5 years, right? When that money goes out. So in 5 years, the Institute is supposed to be self-sustaining. In other words, it's supposed to be paying for itself. And this is supposed to happen by AIM Photonics leadership charging a membership fee to companies, universities, nonprofits, other agencies, so that they can help fund the research going forward. We need a headquarters so we can meet with people who might pay membership fees, right? So the natural question then becomes, how much does it cost to be an AIM Photonics member? And that's not a cut and dry answer. The answer depends on wiggle that for me. Sorry. No way. This actually happened like 2 or 3 times to Paul last week. Was anybody here who saw it? Okay. Anyway, if you're a business, there's a different price. If you're a university, if you're a nonprofit, and there's tiers to the price as well. So it just depends on your organization. And this is pulled directly from their site. And I know it's sort of hard to read right now, so I got like a little cheat sheet right here so I can tell you, or at least some of the highlights of them anyway. So this is the top tier for if you're a business. And that's basically $1 million for a year for 5 years. If you're a top tier, if you want a top tier membership as a business. If you want, let's say, a top tier for a university and you want this research, or if you're a nonprofit, right? It doesn't have to be $1 million a year every year, but over the next 5 years, you got to give them $5 million. If you, let's say you want tier 3 in your business, $100,000 a year for 2 years. So it really just depends on what level you want, and if you're a business or if you're a university. So ultimately, this collective amount of money is supposed to be what sustains the Institute going forward. Does that make sense, everybody, so far? Okay, good. Now, just so people won't think this is a sort of a tall task, it's important to note that it's not like they don't have any customers now. There's people already members of AIM Photonics. These companies, when I told you about that $1 million a year for 5 years, these companies have the top tier membership already. Signed up, gave the money. And these are top tier and second top tier institutions that have paid as well. Virginia, Stanford, Cal Davis, Arizona. And at different levels, these companies have paid memberships as well. Delaware, IBM, Colorado, Northrop Grumman. Recognize any of these places? Harris. So they got money already. So it's okay. Next question. Everybody's doing research. It's probably going to take some time, right, before it actually gets to companies. When are we going to see actual results? When are we going to see integrated chips that we can start using? Well, they've developed this system that grades how far along each research project is in the process. They call it manufacturing readiness levels. There'll be MRLs on all the sheets. So it's basically a 1 through 10 system, with 1 being, I think it might be able to be something. I need some time to think about it and get my mind wrapped around it. It's like 1. And 10 is like, we got it down pat. We should start hiring some people. We need some space in Eastman Business Park. We need to start manufacturing, send it out. That's like 10. Let me just tell you right now, nobody's on 10. And new projects that they're pitching in AIM Photonics, they want them to be in sort of this sweet spot. Sort of not completely finished yet, but but better than just an idea. This sort of, we feel like we got the process down, or we feel like we understand the science behind it. Can everybody see this? Good. You might want to wiggle this thing again just in case it goes to sleep. I just forgot about it. Okay. So, in conclusion, just for the basics part, right now as we're speaking, there's a group of technical working groups that are putting research proposals together, sending them to the technical review board. In 5 years, this thing is supposed to be able to make it on its own. And when you see the list of companies and universities that have already paid for memberships, seems like they're off to a solid start. For anyone keeping count like I am, because I have to, FYI, the Technical Review Board meets this year on the 25th to look at people's proposals, and on my birthday, August 15th, to okay those proposals. So that's sort of the basics real quick. Now I'm going to pick up to, actually I might need to do it, to where David left off when we were talking about the two governing boards. If the internet will be friendly to me. I know you can do it. I know you can do it. I have faith in you. Come on, be nice to me. Be nice to me. Very good. I know, right? This is not promising if it is. All right. Excuse me. I think the biggest question that people have been asking about this whole institute since the headquarters brouhaha has been, who actually runs this thing? And as the guy that's supposed to be picked to write about the Photonics Institute, I'm sad to report that it's not really easy to answer that question. But I'm going to go through these slides and tell you why it's kind of difficult. So, as David talked about, I'm just going to pick up where his story left off. When the governor had a sort of come together meeting with all the sides, bickering over the headquarters, one of the offsets for that was the 7-member governance board, right? So this was originally, from our understanding in the media, supposed to be pegged as the main decision-making body for the Institute. And it was supposed to be 3 state officials, people that Cuomo was going to pick, 2 people from Sudi Pali, 1 person from UR, and another person from RIT. We said, cool, understand, makes sense. We started naming people, it made sense. Rob Clark was supposed to be on it, and we were going forward. And like Riley mentioned, soon thereafter, there was a second governance board created. It was called the Leadership Council. Now, Sudi Pali announces this council and names Mr. Duffy as the chair. It's supposed to be a 5-person panel, and it was described as the true governing board of AIM Photonics. Right, you guys see the confusion there? In the release from Sudi Pali, they argued they created this board because it was mandated by the state, mandated by the Department of Defense. Now, what made this sort of even more awkward was that the creation of this board came off to our local politicians as another way to push the Rochester decision-making out of how this was supposed to happen. So they took that as another way to lessen or even eliminate the Rochester voice in AIM Photonics. So not only that, it left bigger questions like who's the clear leader here, and if we're going to have 2 boards, how they're going to interact, and it's unclear who's on the leadership council now. I mean, we know Duffy is the chair, but there's other members that are supposed to be on it as well. So that just led to all types of confusion about what's supposed to happen. It played out a little bit like this. If this wants to play for me, it's a video. I hope it'll play. Oh, it's playing on mine. It's probably got a delay on it. Let's see. Is it playing on this one? There was a video there.
Sir? No, I've heard a lot about governing boards and administrative financing. What is Photonics actually all about?
Wait. I can give him an abbreviated version. Calm down. We actually had a talk about that last Tuesday. We had someone who's much smarter than me about it explain it a little bit. But the abbreviated version is it's the study of light. It's the study of the tiny particles that make up light. That's called photons, and being able to manipulate those and have them do things for technology for you. But isn't there a link? There's a YouTube link to it? Send you to a YouTube link and you can get a whole hour's worth of what is photonics. Okay, I'm sorry that video didn't play, but basically it boiled down to there's two bigger sides. So we don't know how those two boards are going to interact, but there's about three things we do know. We know that Robert Duffy is going to be the leadership council chair, and with that he'll remain as the RBA president, because this leadership council chair is apparently a volunteer position. Don't get any money for it. Second thing that we know for sure is the AIM Photonics CEO is Michael Lear, who's a professor at SUNY Poly. One of his expertise areas is integrated photonics. So he'll be the CEO, and he'll also keep his professor post at SUNY Poly. And the third thing we know for sure is that that this slide won't move. Oh. That in some way the state of New York will have its say in the decision making, and that's mainly because they ponied up most of the money, right? I mean, the federal government did give money. It was 110 though. Your money was $250 million. So they're going to have some sort of say. It's probably why there were supposed to be 3 people on that governance board, right? So that much we do know. But here's another sort of political issue that may arise going forward with the Institute. As the gentleman in the audience mentioned, the Department of Defense is going to get its projects done off rip. Okay? They put up a lot of money. They decided to have the Institute here. A lot of what the projects are going to be are for the DoD. And on top of that, those larger companies that I mentioned earlier, the ones with the top tier membership, Raytheon, Intel, they paid millions and millions of dollars going forward. Their ideas are probably going to take precedent too, right? They paid the most money. But what makes this weird is that there's still dozens of Rochester optics and photonics companies that paid money to that too, right? We don't know what voice, if any, they're going to have in the decision making of what projects get done, when, where they go to. We don't know that at all. So what's happening right now is some sort of, it's hard to explain, but since we don't know with any of the council members, we don't know any of those members yet, and since we don't know any of the governance board members yet, there's a lot of behind the scenes political muscling, I should say, to try to get Rochester Optics' voice on one of these governing boards, right? They want to, again, have some sort of say in what happens going forward with the Institute. So, again, this is all happening in private meetings. I assume they probably learned their lessons with the whole headquarters thing to have spats in private meetings. But that's what's happening right now with these 2 governing boards. We don't know who's on them except for Mr. Duffy, and there's still people trying to get seats on it so they can be part of the decision making. You don't see it because it's behind closed doors, so we can't write about it, and Time Warner Cable News can't write about it. Go ahead.
So this is just the first institute. Data said this is like the 6th or 7th.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So can't we learn, or can't the people involved learn from projects that are already up and running that might have gone through the same gyrations that we're going through right now?
You would hope so. You would hope so. See, I haven't the slightest idea whether the people who were involved with AIM Photonics actually consulted with some of the other IMIs to say, how did you create the governance structure? How's it working? Is there any kinks of it that we can do differently? I mean, this is all part of the due diligence process that you would hope people in high positions with high salaries would do before, announcing this multi-million-dollar situation. But I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they have, and I would hope that they do, but I don't know. I don't. So that's what's sort of happening right now, and it's all being played out in media coverage here locally between us and other organizations. If you don't believe me, Google any of these headlines, and you'll read or see exactly what I've been telling you up here. Okay? So that's why it's hard to describe who runs this thing, because there's two governing boards, and we're not really sure how they interact. Thanks.
Can we take more questions? Okay.
I love answering questions. Go ahead.
When does the 5 years start? By the time they appoint those people, 5 years is up.
January 1st. That's when the clock started.
This year?
Yeah. It's like a couple weeks ago.
Sir?
Spoken about which projects get funded, but who owns the output? Who gets the right to use it?
The collective, so, and that's another thing I should have mentioned. Well, another thing that makes this a sticky situation is that this is a consortium, which is a weird way of sort of saying there's too many cooks in the pot. But what you're, essentially when you're an AIM Photonics member, what you're paying for is the intellectual property. So the researchers will come up with this idea, and if you pay whatever tier membership you have to it, you can either get full access to everything everybody puts out, or if you have like that 3-tier membership, I didn't show it to you because on the right-hand side, it told you the privileges that you get. But if you're the 3-tier membership, you get like 2 IPs. You get like 2 research projects that you want. So it depends on what you paid for. You can either get everything and it belongs to you, but it belongs to everybody else who has a 1-tier membership, or you can get 1 or 2 projects.
Is your document available to the public?
I can make it to you. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go into it yourself, it's aimphotonics.com. But it's on there. Oh, he asked if all the documents I shared on my presentation was available to the public, and I told him yes, and it's on aimphotonics.com. Way in the back.
We were told when this first started that there were some successful organizations like this in other parts of the country. Has anybody made a success of that?
Success of
Of something like the Photonics Institute. This isn't the first such thing set up. But from my understanding, that there have been others set up throughout the country.
but for other industries, right?
Yes, other
I'm not sure. I know that there are other IMIs with other areas. My educated guess is if they were terrible, they'd be shut down already. I mean, honestly.
I mean, any of them have only been created since 2012, so they're all still fairly early on. So it's probably a little too soon to judge whether any of them have succeeded or failed. I'm going to keep answering questions until Rebecca throws something in.
What is going to get done when corporate testing out for
Has there been anything done to prevent corporate espionage of the intellectual property from AIM Photonics? Or cyber attacks from it? I don't know.
Hopefully someone knows, but it's not an issue that's come up for either of us.
No, not that I know of. Could be.
companies will not sign up for it if they don't know the security.
That's a good point.
Sir?
Aren't many of these companies going to be in competition with each other?
Okay.
Like, what if it was one of the smaller companies working on something that Raytheon is working on. They're expecting that the Department of Defense will be a potential customer.
Yes and no. So we talked about the integrated photonic chips that ultimately are going to be made. Those chips are going to be made for different devices that different companies own. So some of them will look a little bit different or function a little bit differently. So a project that you're working on for Intel won't be a project that you're working on for Optimax, right? Because they're going to put it in two totally different things. So you're still making, in the spirit, you're still making something that has light and still has a semiconductor, but there are going to be custom functions of each of those chips that's only going to work in an IBM computer or IBM device and not going to work in an OptiPro device or any other company. And that's why there's going to be, I believe, a little bit of jostling about whose projects get done first, because we have a lot of Rochester companies here that are small to mid-sized, don't really have time to do R&D stuff for this, but we also have, like I said, those top-tier companies that pay millions of dollars, and they have ideas that they need, integrated chips for as well. Right here.
We have to call it quits.
Okay.
But,
I'm just a point in the center of this discussion, because it appears that everybody is interested in this product for GE or that product for Grumman or this product for healthcare. This whole thing is supposed to be a center for manufacturing innovation, for processes that are better than sending them to China to have them be made by low-cost labor.
Right.
And I think nobody's really worried, no seems to be concerned about the fact that what we really want are processes that can make chips or whatever for all these people. I worry about these damn boards. Don't know any better than that either.
So keep reading us and we'll try to make sense of it.
Many questions continue. Read the Democrat Chronicle as the answers unfold. Thank you, Khristopher and David, very much for today.